The battle begins long before armies clash or words are exchanged. It unfolds first in the mind, silent, unseen, yet decisive. Before the first sword is drawn, before the first command is uttered, a quieter war rages. It is a war of perception, of influence, of shaping what the adversary believes they face. To master this is to wield power beyond mere force. Consider this. When two forces prepare to collide, the outcome is often determined by the mental landscape each side inhabits. If you control the narrative, if you shape how your opponent views the situation, you can command the battlefield before a single step is taken. Your influence begins in the mind, long before the battlefield. This is no abstract theory. It is a cornerstone of strategy echoed through centuries. Sun Tzu, the ancient master of warfare, declared, "All warfare is based on deception." Yet deception is only one thread in a broader tapestry. More crucial is the deliberate shaping of your enemy's view, framing the conflict so that they see what you want them to see and not what is real. If they see what you want, their choices become your choices. Why is this so vital? Because perception dictates reaction. When your opponent believes you to be strong where you are weak, cautious where you are bold, or slow where you are swift, they act accordingly, often to their own disadvantage. Their hesitation, their missteps, their errors emerge not from ignorance, but from a carefully crafted image you project. This mental front, this prelude, offers an advantage that brute force alone cannot secure. It is in this realm that battles are often won or lost before any physical engagement. Imagine a commander who, by posture and promise, convinces his enemy that his forces are overwhelming. The enemy might delay, divert, or falter, granting the commander precious time and space. No swords clashed, no blood spilled, yet victory's seed is sown. To grasp this fully, you must understand that shaping perception is not manipulation in the deceitful sense, but strategic influence. It is about guiding the enemy's thoughts without revealing your true will. It is about painting a picture so compelling that they act within the frame you create. This is the pre-battle dance of minds, a chess game played in shadows. What does this mean for you as a strategist, a leader, or a competitor? It means that your first, and perhaps most critical engagement, is psychological. Your task, to enter the adversary's mind, to plant impressions, to set expectations. Not through force, but through presence. Not through conflict, but through control of the narrative. Before you strike, ask, how do they see me? What story do they tell themselves about my strength, my resolve, my intentions? If their answer aligns with your design, you hold the advantage. If not, you risk walking blind into their trap. Influence begins in the mind. Shape the opponent's view, and you shape the battlefield. Pause and consider. In your own challenges, how often have decisions turned on what people believed rather than what was true? How often has perception outweighed reality? This principle transcends warfare. It governs negotiations, leadership, competition, and conflict of all kinds. To shape perception is to seize the initiative before the first move. Remember, the moment before engagement is not idle time. It is the crucible where outcomes are forged. Master this, and you command the terms of battle itself. Right into his trap. Influence begins in the mind. This is not mere rhetoric. It is the strategic truth that separates those who command from those who follow. To understand why shaping perception is more decisive than physical confrontation, you must first grasp the nature of conflict itself. Conflict is a dialogue between wills, a contest of decisions made under pressure and uncertainty. Before steel meets steel, your opponent's mind wrestles with doubt, fear, and expectation. It is here, in this intangible realm, that the battle's true momentum takes shape. Why does perception hold such power? Because it governs action. What an adversary believes about you, your strength, your intentions, your vulnerabilities, directly influences their choices. A general who appears invincible dares attack, not necessarily because of overwhelming force, but because the enemy's mind weighs risk and reward through the lens of that perception. This is not about deception for deception's sake. It is about strategic positioning that shapes your adversary's framework for decision-making. When your opponent hesitates, reconsiders, or acts rashly, it is often because their perception has been carefully guided to produce exactly that response. Consider the alternative, brute force alone. It demands direct confrontation, costly in lives, resources, and time. It is blunt, visible, and predictable. No subtlety, no nuance. It assumes that strength will outmatch will. But history shows us otherwise. Battles are lost not only on the field, but in the minds of those who fight them. This is why the strategic mind prizes influence over force. It is the difference between playing the game and controlling it. Hesitation is a weapon. Misstep is a trap. Both arise from the opponent's mental state, which you can shape. How do you do this? Through deliberate guidance of belief and expectation. When your enemy expects strength where you are weak, they prepare defenses that waste their energy. When they anticipate a slow advance, they relax vigilance, opening the door for swifter strikes. Their mental map becomes a distorted reflection of reality, your reality. This distortion is your advantage. In the grand theater of conflict, perception is the script, and you are the playwright. But this script must be subtle. It cannot be a blatant lie. It must be credible enough to shape thought without provoking skepticism. It must offer enough truth to be believable, yet enough ambiguity to mislead. This is the art of psychological positioning. By shaping belief, you create hesitation. By creating hesitation, you provoke error. By provoking error, you seize opportunity. Contrast this with the brute force approach, direct, overt, but predictable. The opponent knows what to expect and can prepare accordingly. The mind remains unshaken, decisions calculated with clear vision. But when you unsettle the mind, when you introduce doubt and confusion, you fracture the opponent's cohesion before the battle begins. Imagine a commander who projects calm strength but conceals rapid mobility. The enemy, convinced of a slow approach, commits forces elsewhere, only to be outmaneuvered. Or a leader who suggests overwhelming numbers by visible campfires, when in fact the army is smaller. The enemy hesitates, reluctant to engage, losing precious time. In both cases, victory is not secured by force, but by the adversary's altered perception. This principle extends beyond warfare. In negotiation, a party that appears confident and unyielding can compel concessions without a fight. In leadership, a vision framed with clarity and conviction shapes follower belief and action. In competition, an aura of inevitability can dissuade challengers before they step forward. Your mind is the battlefield's first terrain. Control it, and you control the conflict. Ask yourself, what does your adversary believe about your power? What do they expect from your moves? Are their perceptions aligned with your intentions, or are they distorted by your silence, your signals, or your posture? The answer guides your next steps. To shape perception is to command the invisible prelude to every confrontation. It is a strategic dance where the prize is the adversary's decisions before the first strike. Never underestimate the power of belief. It governs risk, courage, and resolve. If you can influence belief, you influence outcome. If you influence outcome, you control victory. This is the essence of strategic influence, the silent, potent force that precedes all conflict. Hold this truth. The mind is your first battlefront. Shape it with precision. Shape it with purpose. Shape it to win. Influence begins in the mind. Now, you must translate this understanding into action. How do you shape an opponent's perception before the first engagement? What methods give you the power to control the narrative and guide their decisions from afar? The answer lies in mastering key strategic techniques, tools designed not to deceive unfairly, but to clarify your intent and project strength. These methods create a framework within which your adversary interprets every move you make. They set the rhythm and tone of the conflict before it even begins. First, consider projecting confidence. Confidence is a language understood universally. It speaks louder than words or weapons. When you project confidence, you convey strength without overt action. Your posture, your tone, your visible preparations all signal resolve. This is not arrogance. It is intentional presence that plants seeds of doubt in your opponent's mind. A commander who moves with assured purpose, who maintains calm under pressure, communicates a message more powerful than any rallying cry. The enemy senses this and hesitates. Doubt seeps in, but confidence must be genuine and consistent. False bravado is transparent and breeds contempt, not fear. The goal is to embody certainty, to become a living embodiment of strategic will. Second, framing the conflict. Who defines the terms of engagement controls the battle's narrative. By framing the conflict, you set the stakes, the objectives, and the criteria by which success is measured. This shapes your opponent's expectations and decisions. For example, you might frame the conflict as a test of endurance rather than a swift clash, encouraging the enemy to conserve resources or delay action. Or you might highlight certain risks to push the adversary toward caution or overcommitment. Framing is subtle but powerful. It draws the battlefield's borders in your favor and forces the opponent to operate within those limits. Third, timing and pacing. Control over tempo unsettles the adversary. By setting the rhythm of engagement, you keep them off balance, uncertain when or how you will act next. A slow build-up followed by sudden acceleration, pauses that provoke anxiety, or rapid feints that confuse. All these manipulate perception of your intent and capability. Timing is a weapon. Proper pacing can make the difference between a hesitant opponent and a decisive victory. Together, these techniques, projecting confidence, framing the conflict, and controlling timing, form a triad of strategic influence. Each reinforces the other, weaving a web of perception that ensnares the adversary before battle begins. But how do these methods function in practice? Projecting confidence is not merely about visible strength. It includes managing your own information and signals. Your movements, communications, and even silence contribute to a narrative of control. Framing the conflict requires clarity of purpose and messaging. Every statement, every action must align to reinforce the frame you establish. Mixed signals confuse your own forces and embolden the enemy. Timing and pacing demand patience and discipline. Acting too soon reveals your hand. Acting too late surrenders initiative. The balance is delicate yet decisive. Implement these with precision, and you influence the enemy's decisions, pushing them toward hesitation, miscalculation, or withdrawal. Remember, these techniques do not rely on trickery or unfair deception. They clarify your strategic intent and project your strength in ways words alone cannot achieve. This is influence as a form of command. Pause here and reflect. In your own experience, how often has confidence, projected or perceived, altered the course of a negotiation, a competition, or a confrontation? How has the way a conflict was framed shaped your approach or that of others? And how has timing dictated success or failure? These questions illuminate the path forward. Consider the commander who, by projecting unwavering confidence, convinces the enemy that his forces are unassailable. The enemy hesitates, unsure whether to engage or withdraw. Or the leader who frames a conflict as a long-term struggle, causing adversaries to overextend in preparation, exhausting their resources before the fight. Or the strategist who controls timing so deftly that the opponent's attacks fall short or miss entirely. Each example demonstrates how these techniques function in concert to shape perception and command the battlefield. They offer a strategic advantage far beyond the immediate clash of arms or words. This is your first engagement, the battle for the mind. Master these methods, and you control the narrative. Control the narrative, and you steer the conflict. Steer the conflict, and you seize victory before the first strike. Influence begins in the mind. By now, you have seen how projecting confidence, framing the conflict, and controlling timing can shape an adversary's perception. Yet, these are only the foundation. To truly command the battlefield before battle begins, you must embrace more sophisticated approaches to perception management, tactics that weave complexity and subtlety into your influence. These advanced methods do not rely on brute force or blatant deception. Instead, they harness the power of narrative control, ambiguity, and calculated misjudgment to keep your opponent off balance and uncertain. They invite the enemy into a maze of possibilities, where each step risks miscalculation. The first principle here is consistency in messaging. Your signals, whether verbal, visual, or behavioral, must align perfectly to reinforce the perception you intend to create. Inconsistency breeds doubt, confusion, and mistrust, not only within your adversary's mind, but also among your own ranks. Imagine a leader who projects strength in one message, but reveals hesitation in another. The enemy senses this fracture and exploits it. Your narrative fractures, and your advantage slips away. Consistency is your anchor. It fortifies the framework of perception you build. Every action must echo the same strategic story. The second principle is cultivating ambiguity. Ambiguity is not weakness. It is a deliberate veil that obscures your full intentions and capabilities. By revealing only partial information, you invite the adversary to fill the gaps, often with their own fears and assumptions. Ambiguity forces the enemy to guess, to doubt, to hesitate. It denies them clear targets and predictable outcomes. But this ambiguity must be controlled. Too much obscurity breeds disbelief or paralysis. Too little reveals your hand. The balance is a strategic art. The third principle is encouraging misjudgment. This is the subtle art of allowing your opponent to underestimate or misinterpret your position. You do not fabricate outright lies. Rather, you exploit natural biases and expectations to guide the enemy toward errors. For example, by appearing weaker in one area, you lure the enemy into overcommitment there, only to strike where they are vulnerable. Or by masking your true objective, you divert their attention and resources elsewhere. Encouraging misjudgment is not dishonorable. It is strategic brilliance. It harnesses the enemy's own mind against them. Together, consistency, ambiguity, and misjudgment form a triad of advanced perception management. Each element supports the others, creating a complex web that ensnares the adversary's decision-making. Consider how these principles operate in concert. Consistency assures the enemy that the picture they see is reliable, even as you obscure key details. Ambiguity keeps them guessing, injecting doubt into their calculations. Misjudgment exploits those doubts, turning them into tactical errors. This sophisticated dance requires discipline and foresight. It demands that every signal you send, whether a troop movement, a public statement, or a silent pause, serves the larger narrative. Inconsistency breaks the spell. Overexposure reveals your strategy. Missteps in timing give the enemy footholds. Yet, when executed with precision, these tactics create a psychological labyrinth from which your adversary cannot easily escape. Pause to reflect. How often have you encountered situations where partial information led you to false conclusions? When have assumptions shaped your actions more than facts? And how might you use this understanding to guide others' perceptions? These questions sharpen your strategic vision. Remember, your goal is not to confuse for confusion's sake, but to shape the enemy's framework so that their choices lead inevitably to your advantage. History offers countless lessons on this art. A commander who maintains consistent signals even while masking true movements keeps the enemy reactive rather than proactive. A leader who cultivates ambiguity in their intentions forces adversaries to spread resources thin, guarding against threats that may never materialize. A strategist who encourages misjudgment turns enemy confidence into overreach, setting traps with invisible bait. This is influence elevated to mastery. Your narrative becomes a living organism, adapting and shifting just enough to control the enemy's perception without surrendering your true strength. You become not just a participant in conflict, but its architect. Control the story, control the outcome. Shape the opponent's view, and you shape the battlefield's very fabric. Influence begins in the mind. Master this subtle art, and you command the prelude to every victory. The art of shaping perception before battle is not a mere theoretical exercise. It is a force that has turned tides and rewritten history. To understand its power, one must look to the masters who wielded it with unmatched skill. Among them, Napoleon Bonaparte stands as a towering example. In the winter of 1805, facing the combined forces of Russia and Austria, Napoleon faced overwhelming odds at the Battle of Austerlitz. Yet, he did not rely solely on numbers or brute force. Instead, he crafted a masterful deception, a calculated orchestration of perception that lured his enemies into a fatal trap. Napoleon deliberately projected weakness on his right flank, retreating forces in apparent disorder to encourage enemy confidence. He framed the conflict to suggest a cautious, defensive posture. His timing was impeccable, allowing the Allies to advance with overconfidence and disarray. But beneath this facade lay a concentrated strength poised to strike. When the moment came, Napoleon unleashed a devastating counterattack at the center, breaking the enemy lines and securing a decisive victory. This was not luck. It was the culmination of strategic influence, shaping the enemy's view so they acted within a narrative designed to their undoing. The Battle of Austerlitz exemplifies how effective perception management can alter the very dynamics of conflict before it begins. The enemy fought not the force they expected, but the force they perceived. This lesson transcends the battlefield. In your own strategic interactions, whether in leadership, negotiation, or competition, consider how you can apply these principles. How might you project confidence to unsettle your adversaries? In what ways can you frame the situation to define the terms on your own? How could timing and pacing be manipulated to keep others uncertain? Can you maintain consistency while cultivating ambiguity to guide others' perceptions? Or might you permit misjudgment to create openings? These questions are not mere speculation. They are invitations to action. Mastering the art of influence before engagement means controlling outcomes in any competitive scenario. It means winning battles without bloodshed, resolving conflicts without chaos. Remember the words of Sun Tzu. To win without fighting is best. Shape the opponent's view before the first strike. Influence begins in the mind. Command it, and you command victory.